So part 2 interview with Gavin Ashenden here in the studio, and I did say about LGBT because, okay, you've been in Brighton, you know, which
25 years, yeah.
But you do have quite strong beliefs on LGBT and transgender thing. Yes?
We've all got strong views.
Right, well you just lay it out there and then we'll see what people think to it.
So for 10 years I was an LGBT supporter because most of my students in Brighton
it's a strong base,
chapel.
It's
a strong base.
Yeah.
But I became increasingly uncomfortable with the idea that lies behind it, which is that we define ourselves by who we want to sleep with or who we fall in love with. So I find women attractive and I'm a heterosexual, but I just wouldn't go around saying, hey, I'm a heterosexual man who's made happy sleeping and falling in love with women, because that would be a very small part of who I am. What I'm really surprised about in our culture, and I think there must be something behind it. In other words, when you see a good golden rule of kind of psychological health is when you see something over-pronounced, you say it's being driven from something behind the screen. Mm-hmm. So it's just crazy to look at people and to define. It was always crazy to divide people between black and white. It's not terribly helpful to divide people between rich and poor. You know, you're on a sliding scale. If you have a working income, you're a good deal more rich than someone who's got no income. So the way in which we divide ourselves up and categorize people, and usually by categorizing them, making them unacceptable, is something that as Christians we don't believe in. What we do is we look at someone and say, hey, you're a child of God, you're made in God's image, you're really valuable, whatever you're like, that's where your value lies. And your politics, your skin color, your sexual appetite, your favorite sport, you know, these are secondary things.
Yeah,
but in our culture,
we're coming to a but, aren't we?
Well, the but is that in our culture we've decided to, in the name of fairness, to actually define people by their sexual and romantic appetite. It's a bit like an undigested diet of Hollywood. Only it's not straight; it's also lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, questioning. I mean, the LGBT alphabet soup is a very long list.
Well, there's a plus now, isn't there?
Because it's actually a bit incoherent. But what it really seems to be doing is anything but straight, and that's my problem. I don't mind people being whatever they want to be. I mean. Of course they can be. If I can be who I want to be, they can be who they want to be. My problem is that if you believe in the straight thing, which is basically a mum and a dad having kids, we know statistically that all our children do better where they're brought up with a man and a woman having children. Of course people can do awfully well with two lesbian caring parents. Of course they can, or with two gay parents. But statistically as a society, if you unglue biological parents and children, you cause a problem.
Right. So you're saying marriage should be between a man and a woman.
Yes.
And you don't agree with any of this other
No. It's not that I don't agree with them. What I'm objecting to is that if you're a magistrate and you say marriage is for a man and a woman, you lose your job. If you're a maths teacher, so there's a magistrate who's just lost his job for saying that. If you're a maths teacher in Oxford saying I think that marriage is the best way, you lose your job. We've reached a state in society where if you don't buy into the LGBT agenda and you prefer biological marriage, you're now an endangered species. You can't get employed. We're back to freedom of speech and freedom of action. I'm not against anyone believing what they want. I'm for a mixed economy where we can kind of argue for our space and say which works better.
This makes you controversial, though, doesn't it?
It does. Well,
by default,
but only because society has changed.
Yeah.
10 years ago, this was not controversial.
Indeed. Okay.
5 years ago, this began to be slightly. Now it's a matter of getting a job or not. So when I said one of the reasons I've jumped ship is because we're living at a very critical moment in history where society, the conveyor belt of culture, is moving very quickly. And this year I won't be able to get a job. In 5 years' time I may go to prison. So for example, we had a Nigerian street preacher in Southgate who was just saying, believe in Jesus. A Muslim came along, told some policemen he was offended. The police arrested him. They were wrong to arrest him. It was against the law to arrest him, but they did it anyway. And a friend of mine who's a Muslim said, yeah, that's Sharia law. If you diss Muhammad by liking Jesus, Sharia law is the police arresting you and stopping it. We've moved so quickly in our society that both Marxism or progressive culture and Islam are closing down the space of freedom of speech for Christian culture.
Right. But do you get demonstrations from the LGBT group because of these thoughts, or is it just that's your perception, that you cannot now talk out about it. I mean, have you had any bad interactions with different faiths or different sexualities?
One of the things that saves me a bit is that I was quite well known on the internet for being an LGBT spokesman. So you can't call me homophobic. I can't do 10 years of looking after my gay friends and then tell me I've got a problem with being gay. I'm not.
But you were in Jersey for some time. You had a column which was quite controversial, I understand.
It still is. I still have it.
Yeah, so you were a controversial figure. Would you accept that?
Yeah, no, the gay community launched a petition to get me thrown off the island.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, that controversial. But at the same time, before I started writing, there was a difficult funeral in the gay community for some lesbian people, and they said, ask Gav, because he loves gay people, and I do, and I did a good funeral. Only when I began to say that I want a safe space for people who believe in men and women having their own children as an honoured space in society, did that become controversial. Because the ambition is to close that down.
You did lots of broadcasting. I mean, you've been on Newsnight, you've done your thing on BBC Sussex and Surrey.
Yeah.
Has that all now been taken away because you're controversial?
Yes, I could never do any of those things anymore because of my views. My views haven't changed, but society has changed, so the BBC would never employ me now. I'm only on Newsnight as a kind of slightly quaint fringe figure. Am I the Farage of the Church of England?
Sure, they've got to balance something up. They've got to bring you in.
That's right. So they bring me and do that, and then they try and then they ask you provocative questions, see whether or not you're this intense loony who dribbles from the side of his mouth or not. Well, I'm not. One of the positions I've done is I've tried out most views. I'm an academic. I've earned my living at the cutting edge of university life. I don't hold a point of view that if I haven't tested it to destruction. So one of the reasons why I'm making a stand is that I think our society is at a tipping point with freedom of speech.
And freedom of speech, you don't mind people having freedom of speech?
I love it.
By sounds of it.
I love it.
Well, welcome back to the Old Man. Here we don't edit, by the way, so it's all gone out. And one more time, because if people haven't know why you're here, could you just tell us again why you're here?
Yes. So there's a vicar on the island called Dr. Jules Gomez, and
he's controversial.
He's controversial because he believes in the Bible and he believes in authentic Christianity.
Right. That makes him controversial.
It does, because of the way culture has changed.
Yeah, okay,
the same thing.
Okay.
10 years ago, he wasn't controversial. 10 years ago, he was a very well-respected figure in the Church of England, as was I.
So he's invited you over, and you're going to...
Well, but because his church has joined my diocese. If you're an Anglican, you need a bishop.
Yes.
So we've created a new church, a new Anglicanism. Yes. And actually, I've got people all around the world who want to join, who are saying, we're really worried about the faith being diluted, being turned into a kind of religious veneer for cultural Marxism. We want Christianity to be what it says on the tin. And you do that, so can we join, please? And then Jules and I are in this venture together.
And chocolate Easter eggs are just nothing to do. That's just commercialism, right?
Well, chocolate Easter eggs are great, but they've got not much to do with the fight between good and evil and the resurrection of the dead. Then nice to keep you going if you need energy in the meantime.
If people are interested in what you said, do you have a website or do you have a Facebook?
Yes,
where do they find you?
So if they just simply look at ashenden.org, that finds me. Or if they Google Gavin Ashenden, you'll find the stuff I've written and the exciting stuff people have written saying that this man shouldn't be listened to. And you make up your own mind.